Deadlock is an incredibly dense game with so much information that it's really easy to lose track of some of it. Have you ever wondered when the rift actually spawns? I mean, the patch notes were a little confusing about its spawn time. Or maybe the urn. Is it back to every 5 minutes, every 6 minutes? Where does it spawn? What about boxes? What about the camps? Well, in today's video, we're going to cover every timer that I could think of. I'm sure that there's some that I forgot in Deadlock. And this includes towers, as well as like walkers, their resistances, box respawn times, mid-boss, the buffs, everything that I could possibly think of. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, the first thing I want to start with is the Guardians. Now, people might be like, there are no timers related to the Guardians, right? At the end of the day, it's just the Guardians spawn at 0 minutes and you kill them whenever you want. And that's slightly correct. However, the Guardians have resistance dependent on the time in the game that you're at. So for the Guardians, at 0 minutes, they have 50% damage resistance. Now, you can't actually bypass this damage resistance in any way that I know of. Maybe someone let me know in the comments if there is. At 3 minutes, that goes down to 25%. Now, this is not a on or off. This is gradual, right? So these are just points in the game. So from 0 minutes all the way to 12 minutes, it scales from 50% to minus 50. Now, that doesn't mean that if it's 259, it's still at 50%, right? It's going to be gradually scaling every second. It's going to get updated, right? So these are just breakpoints. So the 6 minute breakpoint is the point at which the Guardian no longer, takes less damage. It takes full damage from any of your attacks. So if your gun does 100 DPS, the Guardian is going to take 100 DPS. Now, at 9 minutes, if your gun does 100 DPS, the Guardian will take 125 DPS, right? So this essentially means that at 6 minutes is when the game expects you to start killing Guardians. Although you can kill them earlier, it's just significantly harder. And past 12 minutes, Guardians are a complete joke and you can kill them anytime. Now, for walkers, it's similar. However, the resistance curve is even more drastic. So it starts at 65% resistance at 0 minutes, and it goes all the way down to minus 65% at 18 minutes. This means the game, once it's 18 minutes, Yoshi's like, you got to take your walkers, man. It's time. It's time. So the 0% breakpoint is at around 9 minutes, which means that this is when it starts to be somewhat realistic / possible to take a walker. But past 12 minutes, it's actually very, very easy to take a walker if you just have a strong wave and you have enough damage. Now, walkers have bullet resistance, and they don't have any spirit resistance. So they have 35% bullet resist. However, most gun heroes typically do more sustained damage, so they're still usually better at taking walkers. But some heroes that do sustained damage, that is more spirit, are going to be really good at taking walkers. For example, you can think of something like Seven, or Sinclair with his bolts is really, really good at it. Now, let's get into the boxes in the jungle, right? So we're going to start with the boxes. The boxes, they spawn at 3 minutes, right? So these boxes around the map, this includes the golden statues as well. They all spawn at 3 minutes, and they respawn every 3 minutes. However, there is one exception, which is the mid boxes. These mid boxes right here, they spawn at 10 minutes, but they still respawn every 3 minutes. And I just want to give you guys a quick little tip. If you don't know, the mid boxes give more money than a sinner's sacrifice. So these are worth a lot of money on average. So you should be doing these every 3 minutes if you can. If you're in the middle of the map, you got nothing to do, these are a great thing to do. Now, tier 1 camp, the little guys, they spawn at 2 minutes and then they respawn every 1 minute and 25 seconds. So if you kill them right at 2 minutes, they're going to respawn at 325. Now, usually it takes a few seconds to kill them. So, the second respawn is more like 330. But once again, depends how efficient you are. One thing to note about these respawns is that the box respawns, as well as all the camp respawns, are dependent on clearing the camp or the boxes. Now, for camps to respawn, they have to be fully cleared out. So what that means is that if even one creature remains in the camp, it will not respawn. Like, the respawn timer will not start, right? So you have to fully clear for this 125 to start. Tier 2 camps spawn at 5 minutes, and they respawn every 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Tier 3 camps spawn at 8 minutes, and they respawn every 5 minutes and 35 seconds. One small note to add about both Tier 3 and Tier 2 camps is that some camps will have a mixture of creatures. For example, this camp right here has some Tier 2, which are here, and some Tier 3. It will always have the spawn time of the higher tier. So, for example, this camp spawns at 8 minutes. Even though it has some Tier 2 creatures, it has one Tier 3, and therefore it will spawn at 8 minutes, and it will respawn every 5 minutes and 35 seconds. And last but not least, we've got the Sinners, which spawn at 8 minutes, and they respawn every 5 minutes. Now, once again, for the Sinners to respawn, they have to be fully cleared out. So, for example, the double Sinners here, you have to not only kill both Sinners, but also kill this little thing. So I've seen so many Rem players that they'll take their own team Sinners, which, you know, that's debatable. Is it fine? Is it not fine? But on top of that, they're going to leave this little thing, so their Sinners don't even respawn. So if you're clearing your own Sinners, please kill this neutral. If you are clearing enemy Sinners, you can leave this neutral alive, and their Sinners won't start the respawn timer right away. Now, let's get into objectives. So, the urn is the first objective. It spawns at 10 minutes. Now, the urn is different compared to the jungle because its respawn time is not affected by whether the previous urn was done or not. However, if someone is still holding the urn, the next urn will not spawn, right? So it'll skip a spawn. This is a pretty rare scenario, but it does happen, so it's worth mentioning. Now, the urn respawns every 5 minutes, regardless of whether previous urn was done or not. Like I said, the only exception to this, if someone is actively holding the urn, the next urn will not spawn. If someone is actively holding the urn at 15 minutes, it won't spawn the 15-minute urn, and it'll just skip it. So it spawns at 10, 15, 20, 25, etc. The location of the urn is the first urn always spawns yellow, and the second urn always spawns green, and then it just alternates, right? So it just goes yellow, green, yellow, green. So the easiest way to remember it for me is that if the time is an even number, so 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, the urn is yellow. And if the time is an uneven number, the urn is green. However, do keep in mind that if someone holds the urn and one of the urns does not spawn, then that technique does not work. Right, so if someone, like, that happens pretty rarely, but if one urn doesn't spawn, it kind of throws the whole, you know, thing in shambles. Now, the Rift spawns between 11 and 13 minutes. It basically spawns at 12 minutes, but it has a plus or minus 1 minute respawn time. Not respawn time, but plus or minus 1 minute spawn time. So it spawns between 11 and 13 minutes, and it respawns every 7 minutes. So I do believe that the respawn has no variation. Now, this is quite a new objective, so it remains to be tested, but I'm pretty sure the respawn is exactly 7 minutes on the dot. So when you clear it, it should spawn exactly 7 minutes after, but I haven't had enough data yet to know for sure. I haven't paid enough attention to my game, so please let me know in the comments, but that's how it should. And as far as the location, I think it alternates sides. Like, I haven't seen it on the same side yet, but I'm not actually 100% sure whether it does alternate sides or whether it can spawn on the same side of the map twice. However, I'm fairly certain that the first spawn is random which side it spawns on, right? So as far as like further spawns, I do believe it alternates, but I'm not entirely sure. So don't take my word for it. Like, it could just spawn on the same side multiple times. I'm honestly not sure. When I do know, I will update this whiteboard here, which I'll give you guys a link to the whiteboard in the description. Now, mid-boss spawns at 0 minutes, which it spawns right away, so it didn't used to be the case. And the respawn changes based on which mid-boss it was. So if you killed your first mid-boss, it'll spawn in 7 minutes. If it's your second mid-boss kill, it'll spawn in 6 minutes. And if it's your third or more mid-boss kill, it'll spawn in 5 minutes. So after like the 4th, 5th, 7, you know, mid-boss kills, whatever, however many you got, it'll still respawn no faster than 5 minutes. Now, the Rejuvenator duration just got changed recently, and it's now 3 minutes instead of 4. So we've got some miscellaneous stuff as well to go over, some extra timers, right? The first thing is the bridge buffs, which are also called power-ups sometimes. So these spawn at 5 minutes, and then they spawn every 5 minutes, regardless of whether or not the previous buff was taken. So even if the buff stays there, it'll still respawn every 5 minutes. It has nothing to do with whether you pick it up. So it'll spawn at 5, 10, 15, 20. And the buff's duration lasts 160 seconds, which is 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So almost 3 minutes. So these last a really long time. You can think about it this way. The buffs essentially have like 50% uptime. Like, if you're getting the buff off cooldown every time, it respawns every 5 minutes and it lasts 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So they have slightly more than 50% uptime if you're always getting a buff. So it's very significant. The other thing too is that the buff will not always last long enough for the first rift fight. So the rift fight can spawn between 11 and 13 minutes. If the rift fight spawns at like 11:30, right, then you'll still have your buff and it'll be active for the whole fight. However, if the rift spawns later toward 13 minutes, well, you'll already have lost your buff. So that's something to consider with this RNG rift, is that it can kind of like mess with how much of an advantage this buff, because you might have it for the rift fight, but you also might not. Now let's talk troopers for a second, okay? How often do troopers spawn? So the troopers spawn from 0 to 20 minutes. They spawn every 30 seconds. So it kind of varies through the match length. Then from 20 to 35 minutes, they spawn every 25 seconds, and past 35 minutes, they spawn every 20 seconds. So as the game speeds up, there's more troopers, there's more money, there's more pressure. So the waves, the base can be pushed more. Essentially, they just want the game to end. At 35 minutes, the troopers are done, and they're like, let's just end this game. Let's move on. Now, some fun fact about the troopers is that they gain spirit resist through the game. So I thought this was worth adding because, it's related to time. So basically at 20 minutes, they'll have 20% spirit resist, and they'll have 70% at 50 minutes. But it scales kind of like, through the game. So as it progresses, they get more and more spirit resistance as the game becomes later. Now, at 35 minutes, they also all get 50% extra HP. So this is not scaling. Like most mechanics in this game are scaling, not on or off. This is an on or off mechanic, meaning at 34:59, they don't have anything. And at 35 minutes on the dot, they all get 50% extra HP just instantly like that. And they also grow in size in their model. The golden statue buffs also have a similar on or off mechanic. So basically, initially at 0 minutes, they're called the tier 0 buffs, so like the initial buffs. And then they scale twice through the game. So they scale at 10 minutes and at 30 minutes. So an example with the HP buff is that the HP buff at the beginning of the game is 15 HP. At 10 minutes, it becomes 20 HP. And at 30 minutes, it becomes 30 HP. This is why you'll see a lot of people pop the egg either at 10 minutes or at 30 minutes because, these are kind of the breakpoints where you get higher quality buffs. So if you can technically hold the egg until 30 minutes, you get a lot of buffs that are really, really strong. So that's why you'll see some people, but it's a little troll, but it can be funny. Now, as far as holding the egg for 10 minutes, that's very standard strategy because, you get rewarded for holding the egg until 10 minutes, and it's usually not worth popping it before. And also, this also highlights, the importance of golden statue runs even later in the game as they're worth more. Now, for the end of the video, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the Deadlock wiki. I'll put a link in the description below. A lot of this information is fairly hard to find on your own if you don't have access to the wiki. So the wiki and everybody that updates it, if you're watching this video and you've updated the wiki, thank you so much for your work. Honestly, makes my job easier, but it also makes everybody's life easier. If you want any info, you just go on the wiki, and it's almost always up to date. Sometimes there's some things that are missing or some slight inaccuracies, but I double checked pretty much most of the information here, and I believe everything is up to date. Now, there's a lot of info here, so I'm almost certain that there's probably a mistake somewhere. There's probably things that I forgot. So if you notice anything, put it in the comments below, and I'll try to pin any comments that corrects anything that I said that was wrong or that adds additional details that are, valuable for people. Thank you guys so much for watching, and sorry for the info dump. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and hopefully this helps you in your Deadlock games. A link to the whiteboard will be in the description, and I will catch you guys next time.